Oh, wait a minute. I need to talk. We still got 2 minutes. Okay, are we all nervous? Are we all ready?
Are you nervous?
I'm always nervous before we get going. Okay, yes, and I'm going to need my glasses. Okay, do we have sound? Ladies, are we ready?
6:59.
1 minute.
7.
Thank you. Good evening. Welcome to this political forum. In case you don't know, my name is Ronnie Perry Sharp, and I will be your moderator for this evening. Tonight's candidate forum is featuring the 23rd Judicial District Attorney's race. This forum is being presented by PAVE, and if you don't know what PAVE is, it's Pottawatomie County Advocates for Voter Education. PAVE is a nonpartisan voter education group that began locally as a chapter of the League of Women Voters. At this time, I'm going to ask you to stand, and our Vice President, Susan Morris, is going to lead us in the pledge.
Constitution, position, salute. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated. This forum tonight is designed to give you the opportunity to become more informed and possibly more involved regarding this race. On behalf of PAVE, thank you for tuning in this evening. PAVE would also like to thank the City of Shawnee, City Manager, and this forum, in case you want to see it again, it will be live on VIVE Channel 3 tonight. Then they will repeat over the next week or so. At this time, let's go over our ground rules and our procedures. Each candidate will be invited to make opening remarks limited to 2 minutes each and a closing statement limited to 2 minutes each. After opening statements, the forum will be open to written questions from you, the audience. Questions must be issue-based from the audience. All candidates for the same position question will be given the opportunity to respond if they so desire. Responses to questions will be limited to 1 minute. No rebuttals are allowed in this forum. Workers will screen questions in advance to eliminate duplications and inappropriate questions. Questions may be combined if they address the same issue. Candidates will receive notification of expiration of time when speaking or responding to question at the following intervals: 30 seconds prior to time expiring and at time of expiration. She's holding you the sign so you can see this. Tonight, we drew who would go first, second, third. Your candidates, Alan Grubb will go first. Candidate Tanya Rowland will go second. And candidate David Hammer will be third on our list. At this time, let's get our forum started. And Alan Grubb, you will go first.
I'm Alan Grubb. I'm your current district attorney. I've been your district attorney since January 7th. Does this mic work? There we go. I've been your district attorney since January 7th, 2019. When I took office, there were about 1,800 out-of-custody cases behind in Shawnee and 1,000 out-of-custody cases behind in Lincoln County. The first year in office, worked real hard to catch those up. Then 2020 happened with COVID. It was not a normal year for anybody. We had to relearn how to do court. We started doing court remotely. We've worked hard to catch up from COVID, and I think, I'm proud to say, at my office and the court system has probably caught up by now with COVID. And in a lot of other counties, they're still struggling to catch up with those issues. I have a wife, 3 kids. We'll be married 21 years this year. My children are 18, 16, and 14. They go to Dale in the little town out there in the cornfield by the Grand. And I grew up in Tecumseh. I've known Ronnie for probably longer than she'd want to admit. Yeah, I'd age her if I said how long.
Let's not go there.
So, I'm asking to be your DA again. I think I've got a strong team put together at this point, which took a long time to do because all but 2 employees quit my first day on the job. So it's taken this long to recover, and with the obstacles that's been put in front of me, I think we've done a really good job doing so.
Thank you. You have just heard from Alan Grubb, running for district attorney again. Next, we will hear from Tanya Rowland, and you have 2 minutes.
Good evening. Thank you for inviting me tonight to the PAVE Forum, and thank you, PAVE, for hosting the forum for us. I thank you for the other candidates who are here tonight to speak as well. I think that's important for the community that you have a chance to send questions to all the candidates and to meet each of us. My name's Tanya Rowland. I'm from Bethel Acres. I've lived in Bethel Acres for the last 32 years. I'm married. I married a gentleman from Bethel Acres and have been married for 33 years this August. I have 2 sons and 1 daughter-in-law. I graduated from Norman High School. I grew up in a very conservative military family, and for the latter portion of my life lived in Norman. I have a bachelor's degree in political science and public administration from the University of Central Oklahoma, and I have a Juris Doctor from Oklahoma City University. I've been practicing 25 plus years. I am a current drilling member of the Oklahoma Army National Guard and have 19 plus years of military service. I'm running for this office because, quite frankly, I believe the citizens of this district need the office fixed. There are a lot of relationships to repair, obstacles to overcome. Some obstacles were there, like Mr. Grubb said, when he took office. Some were created by him. So I'm running to fix the current problems in the district attorney's office and to provide the citizens with law and order in the district. Thank you.
Thank you. You have just heard from Tanya Rowland, running for district attorney. Now, David Hammer will speak.
My name is David Hammer. My love of the law started when I was a police officer. When I turned 21, I went to the Reserve Police Academy. Loved it so much after one shift that I went back to the full-time academy. Became a police officer for several years, transitioned into business for a decade or more. Decided the best time to go to law school would be when you have 5 kids, a mortgage, and a wife. And so suffered through that. Did pass, amazingly. Passed the bar, went to work for Richard Smotherman as an intern first, and then got hired on as an assistant district attorney. Found a real passion dealing with victims of sexual assault and domestic violence in the office. Transitioned over to the defense side in 2019, where I've been on the OIDS contract, which is the Indigent Defense System contract, where you are basically one of the court-appointed attorneys for people that can't afford attorneys. So I feel like my experience and well-rounded understanding of the criminal justice system from front to the end makes me the best candidate to be your next district attorney, and I would appreciate your vote.
Thank you. You have just heard from candidate David Hammer. First question we have tonight is for Alan Grubbs. By the way, I'm just 50. I don't know what your age is. Okay, Alan, what is your record of prosecuting criminals and putting them behind bars?
Well, we've put a lot of people away for a lot of years. This last jury term, I think we put away 6 to 10 people for a total of, what was it, David? Almost 200 years. Every jury term, we put people away, and it's usually the violent of the violent that go to trial or push it right up to trial. So I believe I've spent a lot of my time making sure that we put violent people in prison.
Thank you. Would you like to address that question, even though it was to Mr. Grubbs?
I wouldn't be able to answer it because I'm not involved in every case he has.
Would you like to address? All right. Moving right along, this next question, we will start with Tanya Rowland. What will you do to restore the faith of this office?
Unfortunately, that answer is going to require more than a minute, and we're only given a minute to respond. But part of the problem with the office are the relationships that have been destroyed, and there are multiple relationships that have taken a hit for the last 4 years, one of which being the public. Second is relationships with our local law enforcement, and also with victims, which you could lump into the public, but there are relationship problems with victims as well. So my goal would be to work hand in hand with law enforcement. I do not want to go into this office with an us versus them attitude, which I think was present in the office when I was there. So I've already reached out to some law enforcement agencies already, introduced myself, and
Time is up.
thank you.
Would you like to address this
I can answer it
question?
real quickly. The first one is the relationship with law enforcement is absolutely vital to being a district attorney. You can't have one without the other. The second one is the relationship with victims. The outreach to victims, the access to resource for victims is vital, and the access to the general public and listening to what the people of Lincoln County and Potawatomi County want for their DA's office to do.
Alan, do you want to address this question?
Well, I agree. When I came into office, the last election was very negative. It was set up that way. The candidate I ran against at that time spewed a lot of hate toward me, and it was through the law enforcement community. I believe that the law enforcement relationships are getting better in both counties and in the whole district. Her doing that just distracts me.
Sorry.
The relationships have got to be there. We did have problems replacing 50-some employees to begin with. which that had to be fixed through time with attrition, and we have, I think, got a victim services unit that's highly functional, and we're in contact with victims much more.
This next question is for all candidates, and David Hammer, we will start with you. What is the plan for using deferred prosecution agreements?
I am not a fan of deferred prosecution agreements. I think they are, why they are provided for in statute. I see them as a very limited resource to be used by a district attorney's office. It would be our policy not to use them except in extreme circumstances and under very special interest cases.
Tanya Rowland.
I agree with that. They are legal. They're provided for in the statute. So when Mr. Grubb addresses them and says that he's not doing anything illegal, that's true, because they are provided for by statute. But I would not use them to a great extent. The use of DPAs would be an exception to the rule and would certainly not be for any felony offenses, any violent crimes. They would be very fact dependent on the case that it would be offered in, probably a very young defendant and a nonviolent crime.
Alan Grubb, would you like to address?
Yes, ma'am. The thing I think is interesting about this question is everybody calls them secret backroom deals. They're not secret. Y'all can find out about just coming to ask. There was, I think, 48 so far in Pot County during my whole term. So that would be about 12 a year. Considering we prosecute over 1,000 cases a year just in this county, 48 in 4 years is not a lot. That is pretty selective. So I don't believe they've been overused. I don't believe that they are a bad thing. I believe it gives everybody a fair opportunity when it's their first defense to save money from the criminal justice system and have a way to get out from being under the burden of heavy and stiff fines for minor infractions.
Thank you. This next question is for each candidate. We will start with Tanya Rowland. If elected, whom do you intend to oversee the Child Advocacy Center?
I know that there recently has been a push for the Child Advocacy Center to go into a nonprofit status. So I guess that question would depend in large part on the status of the Child Advocacy Center and whether it's a nonprofit or whether it's part of the district attorney's office. I don't have anyone selected at this time, pre-selected prior to an election to run that office, but so I guess I'll cross that bridge when I get there.
All right. Candidate, David Hammer.
If we could get a clarification, are they talking about the organization or the person?
If elected, whom do you intend to oversee the Child Advocacy Center? So I think we're talking about a person.
The person that they've recently put over the center, Casey Kuntz, is who I would probably maintain because I have a lot of respect for her. She comes highly recommended by a lot of people that are in that field, and I don't think that I would make a change there.
Alan Grubb.
I think Casey Kuntz is the right person for that job. She's in that spot. I put her there. I believe that she is the person to help that organization spin off to a nonprofit status, which it needs to be. I think there's some conflict of interest to some extent with the Child Advocacy Center, the person that's going to come testify at my proceeding representing the state on behalf of the child working for me. I don't think that's appropriate. I think that should be in a nonprofit. I believe there's more transparency and less influence by my office if it's not under my office.
Thank you. Next question is for all candidates, and we will start with David Hammer. What is your plan to follow Marcy's Law?
The plan is to do what is required by the Constitution, the statute, and follow Marcy's law. But I intend to reestablish a lot of programs that we had when I was there before, with victim outreach at the very early onset of the cases, to get the victims into the DA's office to meet with whatever prosecutors assigned and help them with access to resources, and to help them have the ability to navigate the system, manage the expectations of the victims on timing, what they can expect as far as testifying, and give them opportunities to meet the people that are going to be working their cases.
Thank you. Alan Grubb, what is your plan to follow Marcy's law?
We've been following it for at least 3.5 years. It took us a little while to understand what Marcy's law exactly was. It was a new law that came onto the books right as I took office.
As moderator, yes. Would you tell us what Marcy's law is?
Me?
Yeah.
It was a constitutional amendment passed by the people of Oklahoma for victims' rights. It requires us to contact victims at the onset of a case, to allow them to participate in the proceeding. And
Now, he gets a little extra time.
okay. It gives us the opportunity to get with them earlier on in the case. We send out letters currently and call the numbers that we get, which are many times bad numbers or bad addresses, because sometimes they'll scan in from the back of a license or something like that. So what we do is we contact the victims at the addresses we have, and we try to get the victims in to talk to them to make sure that they're on board with the prosecution before we start the case, and to make sure that they're going to participate in each step.
Thank you. All right, Tanya Rowland, what is your plan to follow Marcy's law?
Thank you. I agree with some things that both candidates mentioned. Part of it goes back again to relationships with law enforcement, because it is very important for law enforcement to get the correct information for that victim at the time they submit the report, because that's the information that the district attorney's office will use when they try to contact that victim. The second issue that's going to come up is the victim advocate. The VOCA grant was recently lost, so there are going to be some obstacles to overcome in the office with just one person funded for that position. Third, the prosecutor is going to have to reach out to that victim early on. We're going to have to keep consistent prosecutors so that that victim knows who to reach from their case forward to trial.
Next question is for every candidate. We will start with Alan Grubb. What is your plan to restore the grants to the office?
Well, that's a good question. The grants systemically, probably because of relationships, were lost. Those are handled by voting members at DOC board meetings. Scott Hawkins, who's in the audience, is on one of the boards. There's some other people in the room on some of the boards. The grants are a complicated process, and because of relationship problems with law enforcement and DAC, which is the District Attorney's Council, I don't step lock foot with those guys. I have my own opinions, and I make them known. That'll have to be repaired to get those grants back. Some of the grants we'll probably want, some of them we won't. Some of them come with too many strings attached.
Thank you. David Hammer, the same question. What is your plan to restore the grants to the office?
I have already started reaching out to some people that are in this field to try to recruit the best person to restore the grants that we had, which includes the VAWA grant, which is the Violence Against Women Act grant, which provided funding for prosecutors and support staff, as well as I want to bring back the task force grant, which helped with violent crime and drug use in the communities. It's a great resource for small departments as well as bigger departments. You can staff them with really good people that do nothing but those kinds of things. And I intend to that's one of the things I want to do. It's my first priority. It's about timing is the only thing that's going to stop me. because they're on cycles. So as soon as the cycle comes up, we intend to go full force at them and add as many grants as we can get, because the more resources we have in the DA's office, the better off for the communities.
Same question to candidate Tanya Rowland. What is your plan to restore the grants to the office?
Again, the grants are needed in the office. They're needed because of the fiscal constraints that are just inherent in running that office. So you've got to have grants in order to provide resources to the victims and to fight crime, like the task force grant that Mr. Hammer referred to, the JAG grant. That was lost early on, and it absolutely crippled the task force. You can't fund a task force without some of those kinds of monies, and you can't reach out to victims without the VOCA grant. You can't have a law enforcement officer to assist victims, women of crime, VAWA victims, without an investigator to do those things. And the strings are there for a reason. That's the purpose of the grant. They need to be doing grant work. So I don't see those as strings. I see those as, are you fulfilling the requirements of the grant, or are you using this money for something else? I don't see that as a string.
Thank you. Next question is to Alan Grubb. Why does it appear that a significantly majority of mistakes made by your office end up resulting in child abusers walking free, but so few affect low-level offenders? I'm reading as written.
Yeah, I don't really
You want me to
know
read it
what
again?
child abusers have walked free. There's been a couple where there's been inconsistent stories by victims, or weak cases where we pushed to trial trying to work with our victim services community because they strongly believed in the case that we've lost. But the majority of our strong cases, and which should be most of our cases that go to trial, we win. I don't know what cases they're referring to. So I can't answer that question any further than that.
Would you like to respond, Tanya? Would you like to respond, Mr. Hammer?
No.
Moving on. All right. Question to all candidates. Is it criminal to knowingly file a false police report? Candidate Hammer.
Yes.
Hey! Quick and to the point. Okay, Tanya, is it criminal to knowingly file a false police report?
Yes.
And to Alan Grubb, same question.
Yes.
Thank you. Moving right along. Okay. All candidates, and we're still on finances. How will you fix the financial crisis the DA's office is facing? And we'll go with candidate Rowland.
Part of that is going to go back to the question where we just talked about grants. You're going to have some grants. It's going to be tough because there is a pending debt apparently to DAC. The allegation was to the tune of about $600,000. It's my understanding part of that has been repaid. I don't know how much has been repaid, and come January of '23, how much will be left to be repaid, but it's going to take hiring the right people who can carry more than their share of the load for a time so that you can repay the debt that's owed to DAC.
Candidate David Hammer, same question.
It's going to come down, I think, to primarily a relationship with DAC, which is the governing body of the District Attorney's Council, to see if there is a way to enhance the budget at the beginning of another fiscal year. It's going to, because the grants, as I said, are going to be on a timetable. It won't come from DPAs, I can tell you that, not from me.
Alan Grubb, same question.
Well, the schedule we're currently on is to repay the debt. What's left owing still, to my understanding through DAC, is the IT user fees. They charge me so much per seat, and they've calculated on April of the prior year whether I have that many employees at that date or not. So $280,000 was IT fees that were never paid. I had a financial coordinator that was supposed to be tracking all that. That was her job. I've asked for an errors and omissions policy. My first assistant at the time was supposed to be working with my financial coordinator to track all the budgetary issues. And when we were losing grants, people weren't getting fired, is what that debt comes down to. It was a salary overpay, and my financial coordinator was not making me aware of the problem. So that should be completely fixed before any.
Go ahead and finish.
Okay, well, she told us to shut up.
I know, go ahead and
All
finish.
right. So that should be repaid upon the issuance of the first half of next year's budget, which will be July 31st, or July 1st, sorry.
Okay, time. The next question is to candidate David Hammer. You were supported by the former Democrat district attorney, by trial lawyers and defense attorneys. How can you be fair and impartial as a prosecutor?
The people that are supporting me because of my values and because they want me to try to get in the office and fix the problems that are there. Just because they support me doesn't mean I'm going to treat them any differently.
Ms. Rowland, would you like to respond to that question? Would you like to respond, Alan?
Well, I would. He's supported by those people because he was a Democrat up until about the last minute of last year when he had to change to run for this office. So that's why he's being supported by those people. And I've been a Republican as long as I can remember. So I think I'm the only one up here that's been a Republican since before Obama.
Thank you. Okay, this next question is to all three candidates. We will start with candidate David Hammer. Right now, the relationship between law enforcement and the DA's office is not good or healthy for citizens. What will you do to rebuild this relationship?
We will reach out to all the law enforcement agencies, try to come up with ways to, first of all, we'll just have an open door policy. They can come in anytime they want to. I encourage law enforcement officers to come in and talk to their ADAs. The communication between the two is vital because law enforcement depends on the DA's office. The DA's office depends on law enforcement. The two have to work together in some kind of professional relationship, and there has to be an open door. People have to be able to feel like they can come in and have a conversation at any point with whatever prosecutor is assigned to that crime type. And I think that without that, then you're just setting yourself up for failure.
Candidate Tanya Rowland, would you like to respond?
Same thing, really, and most of it I've referenced already, that I've already reached out to law enforcement to introduce myself and vow to work with them and support them. And I've expressed my belief that I have to have a good working relationship with them, that my job is to prosecute the crimes that they submit to my office, that I will have an open door policy, my ADAs will have an open door policy, and also training so that we help better law enforcement and solve any issues, either way, issues in my office where we're not supporting law enforcement, or issues that we need law enforcement to help us with so that we have a better case to try.
Alan Grubb, the same question.
I don't think we still have the problems with law enforcement that we had in the beginning. I think many of those have went away by attrition, and I know that while I'm still not necessarily liked by law enforcement, my my staff is, and they work well with law enforcement. Law enforcement, if we call them now and say, hey, we need you right now for this prelim that is actually going to go that we thought wasn't, they come. So we've had a good working relationship for about the past year. Since Corey Stone became my first assistant, he's really reached out to law enforcement, and I think we've made a lot of inroads, and the criminal investigative divisions are working well with me and him. So I think that problem's at least pretty much solved.
Thank you. Next question goes to Alan Grubb. Are you still allegedly under investigation by the Attorney General's office?
I don't think I was ever under investigation by the Attorney General's office, and the office is because I called for an OSBI investigation after some employees stole some stuff. So I called for the investigation that was ongoing. The David Prater had called for the special audit to be done because of the financial situation of the office, not me. So I think that's a misnomer to say I'm under investigation. They've always made the distinction. It's employees at the office that are. So I think that's an important distinction, and I think that's a primary distinction.
Candidate Rowland, would you like to respond?
No.
Candidate Hammer, would you like to respond?
No.
Okay, Tanya Rowland, this next question is for you. You have stated that unethical actions at the DA's office resulted in your resignation. Did you report any of this behavior to anyone, and if so, when?
Yes, I have reported. I don't have dates, and what was the rest of it?
The DA's office resulted in your you have stated that unethical actions at the DA's office resulted in your resignation.
Yes. I did say that. Yes, I have reported it. I don't have dates to give you of when I reported things.
Alan Grubb, would you like to respond?
I've never seen anything.
Mr. Hammer, would you like to respond?
No.
Okay. Next question is to Alan Grubb. Did you currently or have you had dealings in the medical marijuana business?
Me personally, no.
Quick. Would you like to respond, Mr. Hammer?
No.
Would you like to respond?
No.
Okay. All candidates, this next question. What measures or policies would you put in place to be tough on crime, specifically sex offenders and child predators? We'll start with David Hammer.
What policies?
Yes, what measures or policies would you put in place to be tough on crime, specifically sex offenders and child molesters, predators?
Well, I can't think of a worse group of people. If they are found guilty by a jury, I like to let the community make those decisions because I think that they're the harshest that they can be. I certainly would never be afraid to take one of those to trial. And I would give the public as much opportunity as possible to voice their opinion because I think that that is the best way to send the message clear that it's not a ADA necessarily making that deal. Now, if there's somebody who does not want to go through it, or there's a victim specifically that does not want to endure that, then a deal might be something that's appropriate, but that would be a complete consultation with the victim or the victim's families, because those are the people that are going to be the most affected by it.
Same question, I'll reread it, Alan Grubb. What measures or policies would you put in place to be tough on crime, specifically sex offenders and child predators?
Well, I have put policies in place, no suspended sentences, no probation, they have to go to prison. Now, like Mr. Hammer said, sometimes your victims get to an age where they can't recall some things or don't want to testify, or we had a case this week that was supposed to go to jury trial where there was a trial last time and we ended up with a hung jury, 11 for guilty, 1 for not guilty. We were going to retry it, and the victims absolutely refused to testify because it was so traumatic last time. So sometimes you have to work those cases out because the victims reliving the trauma is not always, it's never a healthy thing, but it's not always an acceptable thing. I take those cases very seriously. If y'all are going to call time on me, I won't tell this story, but we had a
No, you won't be telling the story.
Okay.
Time is up. Okay, candidate Tanya Rowland, same question. Do I need to read it again?
No, I agree with both the other candidates, basically, that the victim is going to be key in any decision on child abuse or any sex crime cases. So whatever I would do in a case, I would do it after consultation with the victim. And I would probably say beyond that, no deferred sentences on anything like that. There will be times when you may make a plea agreement based on the victim and with consultation with the victim, but no deferred sentences. And I also would not be a fan of amending charges down to something else.
Thank you. I'm going to give you all an easy question. How about that? Alan Grubb, does your spouse have a job that would conflict with your role in the DA's office?
Yes, that's why I asked her to move to a different county to work when I took office.
I didn't know that.
Yep. She's a licensed practical counselor for mental health and substance abuse. So I asked her to find a county surrounding us and not practice in this county. Or Lincoln.
Thank you. Tanya Rowland, does your spouse have a job that would conflict with your role in the DA's office?
No.
Same question, candidate Hammer.
Well, I don't have a spouse, so the answer is no.
Oh. I was going to say I'm sorry, but maybe that's not the proper. Oh, let's move on. This is to all candidates. We'll start with you, candidate Hammer. Should this office be elected by party? If so, why?
I mean, the DA's office doesn't really have a say in legislating or, anything about the creating of the laws. We can only enforce what's already on the books. But I would leave that question up to the voters. It's not really my place to make a decision on that.
Same question, Alan Grubb.
I believe it does matter because at your core, whether you're Republican or Democrat, shows what your values are. I have a case right now in Lincoln County that I'm getting ready to dismiss. It was filed as murder in the first degree. The guy shot someone on his own property, and after looking at all the evidence as we were getting ready for trial and having a self-defense hearing, it looks as if he was shot on the victim was shot. I call him a victim. The guy who passed was shot on the defendant's land, and I believe it was a good case of stand your ground or self-defense, and that's why I'm dismissing that case this week. Or May 31st is when the hearing's set, but I think the fact I'm a Republican, a Patriot, NRA Life member, talks about my core values and believing that people have a right to self-defense and a right to protect their children and property.
Thank you. Tanya Rowland, same question. Should this office be elected by party? If so, why?
I understand Mr. Hammer's point that it's really the legislature's decision and the constituents who elect those legislatures, who enact those laws. I understand that point. I understand Mr. Grubb's point where he says that it reflects his conservative values. My only hesitation is that you have an office that serves all of the citizens in the district, and not everyone gets to vote for the candidate. That's my only reservation for having a position like this as a party election.
Thank you. Next question is for Tanya Rowland. How long have you worked with and for Greg Wilson?
How long have I worked with and for Greg Wilson? I don't work for him right now, and I worked for him for about 8 months.
Do you want to respond? Alan, would you like to respond?
No.
I don't think either of you have worked for Greg Wilson. Okay. Next question is for all candidates. We'll start with Tanya Rowland. How long have you been a registered Republican?
I was going to cover that in my closing comments, but since the question came up, I registered as a Republican when I turned 18 years old. My father was a staunch Republican until he died this past February. So I was a Republican from 1986, I'm going to tell my age, until about 2004, when my husband ran for state representative, and I switched my party affiliation at that time so that I could vote and support my husband. And I switched my party back in 2020. So I think, estimating, I've been a Republican about 20 years out of my voting age. So more Republican than Democrat.
Candidate Alan Grubb.
Since before Obama.
Tell us when Obama was in office.
I can't remember that. I can't remember what I read this morning. I mean,
4, 8, 12 years ago.
probably 20 years
Oh.
I've been a Republican.
Thank you. Thank you. How long have you been a registered Republican?
I changed my party last April, I think, to Republican. And the reason is real simple. When I was 18, this county was pretty much Democratic. And when I asked my parents, who were also Democrats at the time, they said, if you want to say in the local elections, you got to be able to vote Democratic. And I'd never had any political aspirations. I always voted in the generals. But I knew that as I grew up and educated myself, I found myself with conservative values. I'm proud to be a Republican. And it's for me, I knew that when I decided to do this, I wanted to do it as a Republican. And so that's why I changed my party last year.
Thank you. This next question is for all three candidates, and we will start with candidate David Hammer. What will you do about corrupt politicians in city and county government?
Prosecute them.
Thank you. One word, folks. Tanya Rowland, what will you do about corrupt politicians in city and county government?
First of all, I'm going to let local law enforcement do their role, and when local law enforcement submits a probable cause affidavit or a police report to me requesting that charges be filed, I will file charges and I will prosecute any crimes that I see.
Alan Grubb, what will you do about corrupt politicians in city and county government?
Well, I've been doing it. I've been prosecuting, we've prosecuted two police chiefs who have, one was arrested, I think, last week. Many times at the city level, you don't know what's going on until there's an audit called. I called an auditor, Shawnee, because there were so many people that were afraid Shawnee had misspent and stolen money. We made sure that that didn't happen. The auditor's office didn't have any criminal findings. So I'll continue to do exactly what I'm doing and ask the agencies that need to be investigating these places to investigate them. As the DA, you have a lot of agencies at your resource, OSBI, the AG's office, the state auditor's office, and whenever, and it's not always appropriate for local law enforcement to investigate financial crimes because sometimes they get very complicated. And you need those specialty investigators to come in and look at what's going on.
All right, moving right along. This question is for all three candidates. How do you plan to rebuild trust between the DA's office and the local LEO, particularly PCSO? We'll start with candidate Hammer.
First of all, it's reach out, and it's to respect the fact that that is an elected official in this county as well, and to understand that the two offices are the same as other law enforcement agencies with the added benefit that that is an elected person in this county. And I think the sheriff's office in both counties and the sheriffs that are elected have a responsibility, just like I would if elected, to make sure that those relationships are solid.
Candidate Tanya Rowland, same question.
Again, open door policy and a lot of monthly or weekly or however schedules would allow, a lot of side-by-side meetings with the sheriff's office and whatever chief of police for the local law enforcement that I was dealing with in the counties.
Candidate Alan Grubb.
Well, in Lincoln County, it works pretty good. I get calls about every Friday and Saturday night from the sheriff's office. For some reason over here in Pot County, it's not worked out so well. And I think a lot of that stems from mistrust during the last election and things that were said by me and Sheriff Booth. And I've tried to reach out over the years. I think the salient point is there was a large seizure done by by the Kickapoo Nation and my task force at the time, and Sheriff Booth believes he's owed some money, and the state auditor found he's not, so owed money. So I think that's just been a sticking point.
This next question is for Alan Grubb. How many cases did you find lost in deaths that had not been taken care of, and for how many years?
Well, not all of them were in deaths. Some of them were just laying out in the conference room. There were between both counties, I want to say 3,800 or 4,800, and some of them were so old that the statute of limitations had ran. There was a manslaughter case we couldn't file manslaughter on because the statute of limitations had ran. There was a child abuse case from 2012 that had never been filed. I believe we filed it. So there were a lot of cases when I took office, and Ms. Rowland can tell you there were a bunch of them, and we spent a long time cleaning that up.
Candidate Rowland, would you like to respond?
I know Mr. Grubb says that cases are current and there aren't any stacks of law enforcement reports that have not been filed on. I don't know whether that will be the case come January 2023. I hope certainly that that's the case, but I will work overtime, and I'm sure any ADAs there will work overtime to work through those law enforcement reports that are found.
Candidate Hammer, would you like to respond?
I couldn't talk to the number. Out of custody reports are always an issue. I can just say that we had quite a few more attorneys at the time, and with the number of staff that he has now, I can't imagine that he is not falling even further behind.
All right. At this time, did you get a bottle of water?
I'll take one.
I'm so sorry, we didn't pass it down. All right. At this portion of our forum, each candidate will have 2 minutes to give a closing statement. At this time, we will start with candidate David Hammer.
Well, I hope that I've given you some insight into who I am and how I intend to run things. This was not an easy decision for me to make, but I'm committed to winning it. You can go to our website at davidhammerforda.com, reach out on Facebook. You've got my cell phone number. If you have any questions, I'm happy to talk to as many people as possible. We're going to try to make as many events as possible. If you want to talk to me after this tonight, I'm happy to do so. I'm very easy to talk to. If you have any concerns or questions, I want to hear what you want done with the office. That is the most important thing to me. I think that's getting overlooked, and I hope that you will consider voting for me on June 28th.
You've just heard from candidate David Hammer. Next, we will hear from candidate Tanya Rowland. You have 2 minutes.
I believe I'm the best candidate for this office in January of 2023. I've got 25 years of practice. I've got about 3.5 years of prosecution experience, 2 with Mr. Grubb, 6 months in Grady County, and I've got a year of tribal or Native American law prosecution experience. I've been in the Army for 19 plus years as a JAG officer. 13 of those 19 years have been in a prosecutorial role, and I've got about 7 years of active duty in those roles. I've done multiple trials, jury trials, and I live by a code of honor. The Army instills that. My family instilled that from a young age, so I had a moral foundation growing up. The Army in 19 years, we live by a code of honor. The leadership acronym, loyalty, duty, honor, selfless service, things like that. I'm the only candidate up here with proven leadership and public service. Mr. Grubb has 4 years in the office, and I think we can all see what 4 years of his service have done. And I'm the only candidate up here with a proven record of leadership and public service.
Next, we will hear closing statements from candidate Alan Grubb.
So 4 years ago, I walked into a prosecutor's office with only 2 employees there that everybody else left. Mr. Hammer had the ability to stay, but he didn't. I've offered him a job several times since then. He's turned me down. He actually asked for a certain salary, and I offered to give it to him once upon a time, and he still didn't take the job to come back and serve. Ms. Rowland chose to leave instead of staying and fixing problems. And truth be told, the 2 years and 9 months of the budgetary problems and the grants, she was handling that with Deidre Johnson, my financial coordinator. So coming back now with either one of these people saying that I've done a bad job trying to fix problems that were created while they were part of both of those systems, I think is just fictitious. Am I going to lie to you and say there's not problems? No, there's been problems. Have I grabbed by the bootstraps and pulled the boots on? Yeah, we've taken care of the problems, and the office is in a good spot right now. The only thing outstanding is this debt to DAC, which I believe will be paid off by the beginning of the fiscal year, starting in 3 days after the election. So with that being said, I believe I'm the best candidate because I have the 4 years in office, and I know what you have to do to be successful in this job. I know what it takes, and if I'm not elected again, I think we'll probably start over with the same problems that I started with. And I know the county can't take that. So I think I'm the only choice for this job.
Thank you. We have heard closing comments from all 3 candidates. I didn't do something in the beginning, and we need to give a round of applause. Will our PAVE people please stand up? They have made this forum. Come on, let's not be shy.
Come on, Judy.
Yeah, come on. It does take a little effort and energy to put it together. I'd like to thank you, the audience, for coming and participating tonight. But now we cannot leave without you hearing, newspaper people, get this down, our favorite saying in PAVE: democracy is not a spectator sport. Exercise your right, go out and vote June the 28th. Thank you for being here. Thank you.